Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Non-Sequitur Nerds. Tonight, we're going to need you to unplug that Player 2 controller, but tell your little brother that he's doing a really good job. Joining me, as always, is my Player 2, Ian. How's it going, bud?
I'm always Player 1.
Everybody knows Player 1's the best one.
Well, yes, exactly. Things are going really well. Today marks the first week of August, at least as we're recording this. So
we're
we
back!
are moving a little bit. Yes, we're moving a little bit further past the sweltering heat of summertime in the Midwest, where you start to melt when you walk outside.
Dude, yeah.
And there's no relief because it's usually like 90% humidity.
I'd say, and you can always tell if somebody's from the Midwest because they will always say the phrase, "It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for this humidity." That's a very Midwestern thing I've noticed, and like out like Southwest too.
Unless you're in like Arizona or Southern California.
In which case it's death all the time.
Correct. In which case you walk outside and your ass literally gets lit on fire.
Yeah. Like, I've been out to Cali right around this time of year, and it is a completely different beast temperature-wise out there versus how it is here. So, yeah.
Usually my forays into California were January, April-ish.
Okay.
So the temperature was actually really nice. It was L.A. both times, actually.
Right on.
I was actually in L.A. when Kevin Smith had his infamous heart attack.
Oh, really?
I was in L.A. at when the day he was performing and had his heart attack.
Oh,
didn't see him. I was there for business. But, so...
Man.
Anyway.
Well, he just turned 51, so happy birthday, Kevin. Well, not today, but recently. So happy birthday, Kevin Smith, if you ever happen to hear this.
Right. Yes, happy birthday. Love your work.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't watched He-Man yet, but it's on my watch list, and I'm really looking forward to it, in spite of what all the Luddites on the internet are saying. Anyway, we digress. There's our first non sequitur of the night.
Yep.
So, yes, tonight we are talking about retro gaming.
Mm-hmm. Something that we're admittedly fans of.
Yeah. Can we call it retro gaming if that's what we cut our teeth on?
I mean, at this point, like I was scrolling through the radio the other day.
Yeah, I think to the Zoomers maybe it would be retro gaming. To us, it's just like
games,
childhood.
Right. Well, like I was saying, I was scrolling through the radio the other day, just getting stations, and heard some songs. Like, oh man, I remember these. And then they said something along the lines of, "All right, we're playing the best of oldies." I'm like, wait, no, this is the '90s music. Oh God, oh God.
Q95 classic rock, and they're starting to play the Spin Doctors.
Oh. You're getting awfully close there.
Right. Yeah, so, retro gaming. So we're kind of talking about the old school stuff. The stuff that Tim and I grew up on, we cut our teeth on. My cousin lovingly babysat me on. I'm pretty sure I've told you this story, but if not, then I'll share it with you. I got into gaming when I was like, well, I'm going to pull out an old man phrase and say knee-high to a grasshopper. And my cousin used to babysit me, and he's about 10 years older than I am.
Yeah.
His mechanism for babysitting was he had an original Nintendo Entertainment System, or Famicom, as it was known in Japan.
Yep.
And I watched him play it one time, like he was playing the original Mario game, and he's like, "Hey, you want to play this?" So he like handed me the controller, showed me how to do it, and then promptly went and took a nap for like 3 hours.
I mean,
and then
you're
when
not
he woke
dead.
up, when he woke up, I was still playing Mario, and I was actually really good at it.
Nice.
That was that's a story that he and I love to just kind of to share with people when we're in groups, because it's funny.
Right.
But yeah, so retro gaming. What was your first game system?
The first game system that I remember having in our house was an Atari 2600, but I was really little. Like, I remember having it. I don't really remember playing it though. The first one that I remember playing was actually my uncle used to live like right down the road from my mom, and I would ride my bike down there to go play Duck Hunt and Mario on that combo cartridge. Usually it was Duck Hunt between the two.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, my family really didn't have game systems
Yeah.
until like I'm the oldest kid. You're the youngest, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the oldest kid in my family, and we really didn't have game systems until like, I basically begged my parents and got a Nintendo, like a classic original, American released Nintendo Entertainment System, so not the Famicom.
Right.
Nintendo Entertainment System finesse.
I'll say you gonna make it tonight.
No, I'm not. Which is actually over in my closet right now in a bag with a bunch of games. I probably should pull it out, dust it off, and put it on my shelf with the rest of my consoles. Because let's see, I've got an Xbox One S, I've got a a Nintendo Switch dock, I've got a GameCube, a PS2, and my Super Nintendo, actual like full size Super Nintendo.
Yeah, nice.
That are all sitting in my bedroom. Pretty much right behind me, actually.
Let's see.
All sitting in the bedroom right behind me, hooked up to well, they're not hooked up, but they're lovingly on display on the TV stand.
I have on the TV here in my office. I have an original Xbox, a backwards compatible PS3. I'm kind of happy about that one. An original Nintendo, and one of my 2 Dreamcasts.
Did you ever get a hold of one of those Dreamcasts with like the special? Was it the Ethernet adapter or the modem that you were looking for?
I got a hold of the Ethernet adapter. Ironically, like whenever I go to like garage sales or whatnot, which these days are few and far in between, sadly, I always look to see like if they've got any old games, see if there's like any odds and ends ones from my collection.
Thanks COVID.
Right. Like any odds and ends games, like that I can add to my collection, or like a gem that somebody has, they don't really know what it's worth. I pick it up for cheap. Cool, I have it now.
Right.
Somebody had a bunch of Dreamcast games in a Dreamcast, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'll pick up these 2 games. And I looked at the system. I'm like, I already have a Dreamcast. I'm like, oh, what are the odds that this thing has an Ethernet cable on it? Turned it around, it had the Ethernet hookup.
And Tim promptly shat himself.
Yeah, because those things, like on eBay, like secondhand markets, they're expensive. The guy had $10 on it, and it was the system, 2 controllers, and a memory card, and then of course all your cables took it up. And I'm like, all right, so I kind of pick it up, don't really say anything, and grab a couple games. Like it was like $40. Dude's like, oh, you're buying all my Dreamcast stuff? I said, there's a couple games over there. He says, well, I'll tell you what, I haven't touched that thing in years. I'm not even sure if it still works. You grab all the games that are over there with it, and I'll sell you the whole thing for $20. Okay. So,
meanwhile, Tim is sweating in anticipation, going, please.
Yeah. And I can happily say the Dreamcast worked. I did have to adjust the laser eye on it, which was kind of a problem with those, but that's a simple fix. The Ethernet adapter works perfectly. All the games work perfectly. The memory card works perfectly if you have it plugged into a controller. I've put different batteries in it. It will not work as a standalone VMU. I'm not sure why. But if you have it plugged in, it works as a memory card. So I have an extra memory card. So
nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I think again I had the original NES. I've got a truck ton of games. I've got the light gun for the Nintendo,
which does not work on modern TVs.
Correct. For those of you that didn't know, also when you had the older tube television type things, one of the fun tricks for Duck Hunt was you took the light gun and you shoved it literally right up next to the screen, like touching the screen, and pulled the trigger, and it would register the entire screen as the blast radius.
Yep.
So you could insta-win Duck Hunt.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, so I have that, and I have actually, I'm pretty sure it's still in there, but I had it when I was growing up, and it should still be within that bundle of stuff. Game Genie. Do you remember those?
Oh, man. I remember who I was talking to the other day, but that got brought up, and like cheat codes. Like it used to be, like some games, well, a lot of games, had push-button cheat codes. Like,
I think the most famous one being the Konami code.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, push button cheat. I mean, there's games that even relatively recently that had cheat codes. I was
Right.
actually talking to my brother's friend this past weekend.
Yeah.
Morrowind had push button cheat codes.
I'd forgotten about that. But like
Yeah,
it's not
you
as
could.
oh go ahead.
Yeah, you did a button combination. Like you went to the start menu, you did a button combination, and you exited, and it would you had to do three different combinations, but it would give you unlimited health, unlimited mana, and unlimited stamina. But it
Not
wasn't
bad.
like it would never go down. It would just deplete and then instantly like it would go down and then instantly pop back up.
Not bad,
So
not bad.
if you fought something strong enough, it could kill you.
Right.
If it hit you hard enough and fast enough, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, push button cheat codes.
Yeah. I'd say and the game genie, I mean, that was, I mean, very much an unlicensed peripheral, but it effectively allowed you to, for lack of a better description, hack the game, and it would, it would change the way. Pretty much, you would take the cartridge, not the disc. You would take the cartridge of your game, pop it into the game genie, and then plug that into the console, and effectively all the data from the game cartridge would pass through the game genie, and it would change the way that that certain data values were read by the system. So the system may
Yep.
think, oh, I'm not supposed to take down their HP when it gets hit, or I'm supposed to not take away money when they buy something from the shop in the game. But it seems like stuff like that nowadays is relegated to like paid DLC.
Paid DLC or mods,
Yeah,
whether they're
mods, yep.
sanctions, whether they're sanctioned or unsanctioned mods,
Yep.
fan mods, all that kind of stuff. And that's the nature of the game
Yeah.
anymore. No pun intended there. It's just everybody, they don't have those kind of peripherals anymore. I mean, what are you going to plug it into? Damn near everything is either disc or digital these
Yeah.
days. Like,
Which I do need to bring up something on the show. Speaking of digital, Ian, what was it that
I
you
was waiting.
what was it you recently picked up? Remind me again. I forgot.
I bought a grill.
And what brand is this grill, Ian?
Oh crap! What?
This is
brand
my
was
most
this?
smug look.
George Foreman, I think it was.
You sure it wasn't Sony brand?
No, they don't make grills. They just whatever they make just usually generally overheats. Yeah. So what Tim's alluding to is I did pick up a PlayStation 5. As
Yep.
much as I should say I really derided them. I just wasn't really interested in it.
Right.
And the reasoning behind my acquisition of a PlayStation 5 was, one, I had a little extra spending cash, and two, I was recently at Tim's house, as you guys may remember, when we did our very cheeky, stupid intro where
Yeah,
I appeared on Tim's
It
screen.
was pretty stupid. Not gonna lie.
It was pretty dumb. So I was at Tim's house and I was watching his wife play Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that really hit me straight in the nostalgia. And
Now,
it was at that.
I do want to say, when I was originally talking to Ian about getting a PS5, Final Fantasy VII was one of the things I brought up. I said, hey, you'll get to play this. Ian said, and I quote, Final Fantasy VII is not enough to get me to buy a system.
Yeah, but then I also went back and looked at the other things that I could do. I really enjoyed the God of War games.
Yeah, they're good games.
So, I'm looking at that. The crap, what was this? I'd mentioned it to you earlier today, and I can't remember what it was. God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the PC port of that, but I could probably play it on the giant toaster oven that's now occupying the underside of my television.
Yep.
Bloodborne was always looked like an interesting game to me.
It really is. It's hard, but I mean, it's. I love the art style in that game, though. I was actually
Right.
talking to one of our mutual Fantasy Star friends earlier about Code Vein. And I said, I couldn't get very far in that game. I'm not very good at those punish yourself kind of games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, things like that. But like, I love the art style of Code Vein. Same thing. I love the art style of Bloodborne. I'm just not good at them. But I love the way
Right.
they look.
Yeah, but anyway, so in new news, I now have an official toaster oven. It's a digital only version.
Yep.
Because I'm cheap, and I'm I mean, there's at this point there's a handful of games on it that I'm going to play. So anyway,
Back to old
back
games
to,
though.
yeah, back to old games now. We're pivoting here. Um, the Nintendo Entertainment System was probably I mean, there were things like the Intellivision and the Atari
Well,
that
our
existed.
friend Daniel had it in television. You remember that?
Yeah, I was at his house when his dad brought it home.
Okay, see,
Like,
I played it at his house. Like that was it was so unique compared to any of the other retro systems of its time. But I think that's kind of like I haven't done much research into Intellivision because it's not really something that pops up on my radar a whole lot. But I think the fact that it was so different may have been kind of what I mean that and the video game crash of the '80s, but because everything kind of suffered from that.
yeah, I mean the Intellivision and the Atari were, kind of like the original Pong machines. Obviously, were like the original OG video game systems,
Yep.
but they were very niche. Like,
Yeah.
not a lot of people really got into them. I really feel like the NES was where the boom started.
Well,
Like,
they're what picked it back up after the crash. That's when they really hit their stride, and it's because they marketed it as an entertainment system and not a video game system. Because
right.
that was their goal. Well, I mean, in like the U.S., we didn't see a whole lot of the entertainment side of things, but like in Japan, I mean, heck, they had a dial-up modem for it, if I remember correctly. That I might be thinking of the Game Boy, but I remember there was something for the NES that you could do like your banking on. If I might be thinking of a Game Boy peripheral, which I mean is another retro thing, uh, but I mean, yeah, it's they marketed themselves in the States as an entertainment system, which kind of sidestepped that notion that people had that video games are not going anywhere, they're not going to be a thing. So they marketed it as something different, and I think that
Well, yeah,
really did Nintendo a great. That was a great thing that Nintendo did.
right. The other thing though is that you have to remember that the American Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, was completely different
Oh
from
yes, oh
the
yes.
Japan Famicom.
Mm-hmm.
The Famicom is actually short for Family Computer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go out on the internet and
Yeah.
look at images of the Japanese Famicom, it looks nothing
Yeah.
like the Nintendo Entertainment System that
Yeah.
we had here in the United States. I mean, the NES was a big gray box
Mm-hmm.
that had a little flap that you shoved the cartridge in after you
Yep.
blow in it to make sure that it was, clear the dust off the panels. Which, by the way, was actually not a good thing to
No,
do.
no, it was not. But everybody,
Yeah,
like, okay, like, I was talking to somebody a while back about this. Everybody knew to blow the dust out of the cartridge. Who taught us that? Everybody just
I,
knew it. It's like that
I,
weird
I don't.
S-shaped thing when we were in elementary school. Nobody knows where it came from.
Yeah, yeah, I have no idea. I think I learned it via osmosis, I think, from another one of my cousins, although he was a little bit more violent with his game cartridges. So
Oh
like
no, oh no.
if they didn't work, he would just bang them on the edge of his bed and then shove them back into the Nintendo. Or he would
That's
just like
painful.
smack the top of the Nintendo.
That's painful.
But usually what was causing that was that the pins were loose and they weren't registering. So yeah, I guess it kind of worked because he knocked the pin back into place.
I guess.
But yeah, I actually had I had a cleaning kit
Yes. Yep. Yep. Same.
for yeah. Some people may remember these. It was a little kit and it basically had these long Q-tips,
Mhm.
like these soft Q-tips and a bottle of like cleaning solution. And you put a couple of drops on the Q-tip and then you wiped it on both sides of the pins.
Yep.
And then there was like this little thing that you shoved in there that it would like clean them and dry them,
Yep.
and then you put the game back in. I don't know. That might be still in the box, the bag of crap that I have in the back.
Right.
I actually probably really should go look and see what's in there.
Right.
But I mean, I've got probably like 30 NES games in that bag.
You've got a power glove in there somewhere, don't you?
Oh man. No, I never had the Power Glove, and I never had the Track Mat, which was basically Dance Dance
I
Revolution
forgot about
20
that.
years ahead of time.
For mainly for the track and field game was the big one
Yeah.
that used it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it was the track event. Like you literally stood there and ran on a mat.
Yep.
Like it was like it looked like uh crap. What's that game that you? It looked like a twister board.
Yeah, kinda did.
Yeah, it looked like a twister board. Like you just roll this thing out and you plugged it into the Nintendo, and then you ran on it.
Yep.
Now we have the Ring Fit, which is basically the same thing,
Right.
just sans the mat.
And more accurate.
True. True.
But yeah,
Yes.
the NES had a lot of really weird peripherals because, like, from where it was so big, like everybody was making stuff for it. I mean, even unlicensed stuff. Like, there's countless like third party light guns. That like some of them looked like guns, some of them like some of them looked like real guns. Some of them obviously looked more like the NES Zapper, which you could tell was a toy. Gosh, what else? I mean, the Power Glove that we alluded to. Man, Game Genies, the mats, just all kind like Rob the Robot. That was actually an actual Nintendo thing. One of my buddies has a fully functioning Rob. That like I have seen them, but I've never actually seen one in person until then. And I'm like, do you mind if can you show me how it works? He's like, yeah, no problem. So he set everything up, and it's a very rudimentary toy, but it was a cool way to interact with your game and a toy, which was kind of, I mean,
Right.
looking at going to the future there, really ahead of its time as far as interacting real world stuff with a virtual game. So it was neat. It was neat.
I don't necessarily think Nintendo has always revolutionized the industry,
Mm.
but they've perfected concepts.
Yes.
If you look back, you had one of these, the PlayStation 2 iToy.
That was so much fun when it came out, though.
It didn't work most of the time.
Well, if you had perfect lighting, it worked pretty good. But that's the problem, is you had to have perfect lighting. Dude, getting my grandma to play on that thing, though, that was a blast.
Well, yeah, but my point was that, like, the iToy was kind of like that first in the, like the being able to detect what you're doing, and then Xbox had the Kinect, which worked better, but it never really caught on.
Yeah,
as far as like
and
motion.
when it didn't work, it failed horribly.
Oh yeah, I remember when the first time I got it. I first time I got one on the 360 because they didn't have one on the OG Xbox.
Yep.
It was the 360. Like they touted, motion controlling your menus, and it was like, squeeze your hand to like close the app, or like blow up your fingers to open an app. You can swipe or whatever, and like I'm pretty sure every idiot with an Xbox Kinect was sitting there like going like this, and nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And you're just getting more and more frustrated, and you're like, all right, fine, I'm just using the controller. I mean,
Yeah.
I literally I wound up using the Kinect for a voice controller.
That's what I ended up doing with mine. Like, I had a few Kinect games, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead a few generations console-wise, but I mean, I had a few games for it, but at the end of the day, it turned into a thing to turn on my Xbox if I couldn't find the controller right away.
Right, exactly. And nowadays, I can actually control my Xbox with my Google Home.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like any smart connected device you can turn on your Xbox with.
Yep. Like I could literally sit here and tell my Google to I gotta make sure it didn't just pick me up.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell it to turn on my Xbox, and it would do it.
Right.
So we've obviously come a long way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nintendo kind of perfected those, these kind of innovations. They took they took motion controls and made it a thing.
Right. They built a whole console around it.
Right. Not only they built a whole console around it, but they like made it perfect, with the exception of accidentally yeeting your controller into your television or the wall.
Or the wall.
But I mean, they kind of fixed that with like the wrist strap things.
Right. No, all that they fixed was if you didn't use a wrist strap, you couldn't sue them.
Well, I mean that
they fixed it.
Yeah. Yes. Point being is, though, they've done revolutionary things, and where I'm going with that, though, is jumping back to the '80s generation, the Game Boy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Handheld a handheld computer entertainment device. I mean, it had less memory than the clamshells that I'm wearing on my head.
I mean,
In
yeah,
all actuality,
yeah,
but it was a handheld portable gaming device
yeah.
for anybody that had a Nintendo. Like they were like, oh yeah, this is really cool, but I got to go on a road trip with my parents to Rhode Island or BFE nowhere, which
Yeah,
is where Tim and I grew up. So,
yeah,
but the point being is like you go anywhere as a kid and you're like, oh, I miss my Nintendo. I mean, nowadays my kids are like, oh, I miss my tablet.
right.
Um, but the original NES or GameCube was this
Game
big
Boy.
blocky Game Boy, big blocky thing that was pretty huge. I mean, the
Yeah.
game cartridges were about what 2.5 by 2.5
I say about.
inches, two
I know
two
that
by
this
two.
this is no frame of reference for anybody even watching the video. It's this
Yeah, so
big. I
yeah,
don't have a Game Boy cartridge handy. Otherwise, I would show one. But I mean, they were pretty good size. Um,
yeah. I mean, they were pretty good size. But I mean, it was revolutionary at the time as a gaming entertainment
oh,
system.
absolutely.
I mean, it sucked battery like nobody's business. I mean, you get
What
like
wasn't as
what?
bad as the Game Gear though.
Well, nothing was really as bad as the Game
I
Gear.
liked the Game Gear.
Everybody liked the Game Gear until you had to spend $47 every week on batteries.
Yeah. But I mean, the Game Boy. I mean, I kind of talked about this with the NES. The Game Boy was another thing that just had so many accessories for it because the Game Boy was just a single color screen. The background itself was green. All the pixels were black. So it was a very very simplistic display. No backlight on it. So there were so many different light kits you could get for it that would plug into either the port on the side of it. There were some that clipped onto it and used their own batteries to like shine a light on it. Um, you remember the magnifying kits that would make your
Oh yeah.
screen bigger, and literally it was just a magnifier, a magnifying lens that they put on a thing that snapped onto your Game Boy. I remember it was a combination. Got to remember what all it had in it. It was a combination screen magnifier, light, and stereo sound kit. You would literally snap it onto it, plug it into the port on the side to draw power to the lights, plug another cord into the bottom of your Game Boy and the headphone jack that would have two speakers on the side. So I mean, it made the Game Boy was already really cumbersome. It was not. It was portable, but it wasn't small by any stretch. Like I've got an iPhone. It was probably, man, looking at it, probably three iPhones thick at least.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I mean, like this is an iPhone 11.
I mean, it was easily
bigger than that.
it was easily probably 3 inches thick.
Oh, easily.
I mean, essentially these kits turned your brick into a cinder block.
Yes.
Like,
I
you
mean,
could
luckily
kill
they
somebody
were
with
they
it.
were removable, but I mean, then you got into you got all these extra accessories. Well, you're gonna need a carry pouch for it, and there were countless carry pouches for it. Some that had
Oh,
a
sure.
fitted foam case to keep it from jostling around. Some that were literally just a small padded purse, effectively you just chuck everything into. And that's not even including like any of the game cartridges, extra batteries. I mean, there was a lot of stuff for it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force where Master Shake gets the cell phone or his cell phone kit or whatever, where it's like the thing that wraps around him and he keeps buying more peripherals for it, and
Yep.
it eventually gains sentience.
That's kind of the Game Boy.
Yeah, that was the original Game Boy. And then they came out with an updated version of it, which was thinner profile, still black and white, required batteries. Yes, my cat just walked by, which is probably why Tim's grinning.
I like kitties.
That's what she does. I don't know why she can't jump up on the other side of the desk. That doesn't involve me. It's probably just her being narcissistic and announcing her presence to me in the world.
It's a cat.
But anyway. Yeah, so then there was the smaller profile Game Boy, which I think was just like It wasn't the Game Boy Advance. It was like
Game Boy Pocket.
Yes, that's what it was. Game Boy Pocket, which was just it was a smaller form factor. Still used the same size cartridges. Like you could play the original Game Boy cartridges on it.
Yep.
But it was a smaller unit and sucked up less battery. I think it only took 2 AA's, whereas I think the original Game Boy took like 4 or maybe a Deep Cycle Marine battery.
Right.
I can't really remember. So
Oh, there were also solar panels for the thing too, which did not work. Like when they did work, they still didn't work. Because you would have
well,
to
you
have
also
like
remember
direct outside sunlight.
solar technology back then was pretty new
Yeah.
and very expensive.
Yes, but like it would maybe because if you had the regular batteries in it, it would inevitably drain those slightly slower. Is all it really accomplished. You could a lot of companies touted those things as being able to play your Game Boy without batteries. No, like you could get it to turn on and then it would immediately turn off.
Yeah.
But if you had batteries in it, it would like give you like maybe like a 2% life increase on them, which whoop de doo for the $100 you spent on a solar panel. But I remember I didn't have an original Game Boy. My first Game Boy was actually the Game Boy Color. Or no, I had a Game Boy Pocket. I take that back. I had a Game Boy Pocket, and then I got the Game Boy Color like shortly after it came out. There was we were doing some fundraiser at school, and if you sold so many whatevers, one of the prizes was a Game Boy Pocket. Well, I
Was
remember
it the pizzas?
it was either pizzas or candy. I don't remember what it was.
I think it was the pizza one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we come from BFE nowhere,
Yeah.
folks. Like we had to do fundraisers in order
Yep.
to get like overalls for the Amish kids.
Exactly. But I remember the Game Boy Color had just came out when we were doing that, and I had asked one of the event coordinators. I said, "Hey, there's a new Game Boy that came out. What are the odds that I could maybe get that?" And they're like, "Well, we'll have to ask and see if we can." And they talked to the company that actually did the event, and that company in some areas was actually already they had already changed it out for the Game Boy Color instead of the Game Boy Pocket. And they're like, "Yeah, we can go ahead and send you one. Just make sure it goes to the right kid." So I remember when they were giving out the prizes, my class was sitting there, and they're like, "All right, and let's see the next prize," because instead of calling out like, "Ian, you got this prize," and giving it to you, they're like, "All right, who signed up for this prize? Who signed up for this prize?" And the guy that pulled it out didn't know that I had requested a Game Boy Color. So, "All right, we got a Game Boy. Who is it?" And I happened to glance up and just happened to see that it was the Color. And one other kid was like, "Oh, me, I got one too." And I saw it, and I'm like, "Actually, that's a special one that I had requested." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And like just takes it out of that other kid's hands and hands it to me. And like I feel bad because like he shot me the dirtiest look ever because like he looked down and realized what it was. I was like, no, give it back. So like that's yeah. But like the Game Boy Color, I mean, it's still the same thing. No backlight on it, but the big feature, as the name implies, was it was actually in color. Now, I mean, it wasn't the greatest color, but it was color. And the cool thing about it was there were some the Game Boy Color games, or the ones that said Game Boy Color on them, you could still play it in the original Game Boy. But if you played it in a Game Boy Color, they would be in full color. Any of the games that weren't specifically made for it, you could still play on it. And it had what were called color profiles, where you could say, like, okay, well, I want to pick the profile that's red, yellow, and orange. And it would, based on the shading of the black and white pixels, would figure out colors. So, I mean, it would give you color in your games, but it never looked as good as the actual Game Boy Color games. Like, I remember...
It was color in air quotes.
One of the ones I had that was Game Boy Color that I remember was one of the Duke Nukem games. And I mean, that,
God.
Yeah, I know, right? Back when they were good. But like that one, like playing that in color on a handheld was so amazing. Like I had, I talked about it a little bit ago. I had the Sega Game Gear, which was kind of their answer to the Game Boy. And like Ian said, the Game Boy took 4 AA batteries. The Game Gear took 6 and ate through them quicker. But the Game Gear was a full color backlit screen with stereo sound built into the handheld. So their thing was, well, we're doing everything Nintendo does better. That was kind of their whole, well, that was their marketing ploy for everything they did.
If you guys want to visualize what a Sega Game Gear looked like, basically imagine in your mind a Nintendo Switch, but with a smaller screen. Basically, make the controllers bigger and the screen smaller, and that is the Game Gear.
Yeah, no analog sticks, just a D-pad and
right
3, 2, a couple.
I think it had.
So
I
it's
think
been
it
a
had
while since I
6
played it.
buttons.
Well, I'm trying to remember now.
Because
I
they
know
modeled
that
it after. It came out after the Genesis, right?
I think it was only 2 button though. I think it was just A and B if I remember right, because
I
they
think
couldn't
it was.
fit all the buttons. I know that the Genesis had well either 3 or 6 buttons depending on which controller you had. I think the Game Gear only had the 2 on it, if I remember right. I've got
I'm gonna
one.
have
It's
to
just
look
been
this up.
years since I've played it, but very similar to what Nintendo did. They brought a lot of
All
their
right. Yes.
games.
So yeah,
It
they
was
did
2.
have. Yeah, they only had the.
Okay,
They only had the 2 buttons, but they. I think they.
no triggers.
Can't really tell. Can't really get a picture of the back. Yeah. Yeah. No buttons.
Yep.
But apparently it had a DVI out port on it, or I'm sorry, VDA,
Yes.
VGA
VGA.
port
Yep.
out on it.
Yep. Well, the old headphone style VGA too, which kind of worked. But like the Game Gear, the same thing had a lot of weird accessories on it. 2 that I remember that I remember owning. One was an FM radio tuner, where you plug it into the cartridge slot. It actually had a full size telescoping antenna on it, and you could pick up radio stations as you're going down the road in a car that already has radio in it. But you could listen to a station, other than what your dad's listening to in the car. But the second one that I actually got a lot of use out of was a TV tuner, where you plugged it in, same thing, giant telescoping antenna, had an actual an analog dial on it to go through the over the air channel stations, and like when a channel came in, it actually looked really good on it. And same thing, it was full color, backlit. I mean, that was really cool. Only problem was if you're driving down the road, you're constantly having to move the antenna as you're going down the road around corners and whatnot to get a better picture. But like I would even like at home be like laying in my bed watching TV on that. And, like I thought that was so cool. It's a portable TV, which back in the day portable TVs were they were pretty pricey.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Tim's mom is pissed off because she's having to spend $87 in batteries a week.
Yeah.
Going, what the hell are you using these for?
That was one of the first things that she bought me was an actual. I don't remember if it came with a power adapter or if we got that separate. But I remember I got one, and like that was the rule. If you're in the house, you use the wall adapter for it, because it ate through those batteries. It was insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Game Gear, I had a lot of fun, but as with most things in the age of Nintendo versus Sega, Nintendo, even though Sega a lot of times had better features in their stuff, people were buying the Nintendo stuff because it's what they knew. They were more familiar with the Marios and and things like that, and the Zeldas and the way that Nintendo did things.
I think the major problem with Sega was they just didn't have good marketing. I don't think they really marketed the materials well. Nintendo really had the game figured out. Like
Right.
they had decent marketing. They knew how to get people's attention.
Yep.
They marketed as family, family
Yeah.
friendly devices.
Yep.
Not really marketing them as video games. And that was the whole thing. It's like, ooh, people shouldn't be playing video games. You're evil. Blah, 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 blah. You remember Jack Thompson from the 90s and the 2000s, the guy that was saying that, video games cause violence, even though every study out there has said that is absolutely not true.
Yep. They actually say it improves your eye function, it improves your hand-eye coordination, improves your fine motor skills, improves your memory, improves your I don't have memory apparently. Improves your reasoning skills, your logic skills. I mean, there's all these tests that show that there are benefits to playing them, and absolutely.
And in point of fact,
in
point of fact, folks, for your edification, there are not one, not two, but multiple Formula One drivers out there that cut their teeth in video game systems with like the analog steering wheels and the shifters and things like that.
Yep.
These are people that won video game racing tournaments, and then were eventually brought in to full Formula One racing teams as drivers and professional drivers that started on video games. So if anybody ever tries to tell you that video games have no purpose in this world, tell them to go sit on a stick.
Or, look at the countless, esports competitors who that is literally what they do for their job. That is how they make more money than you and I do. Look at all the countless YouTubers who do nothing but review or play video games. I mean, shout out to one of my favorites, Markiplier. He literally, that is his day job, is playing video games, and the dude is a freaking millionaire. I mean,
Yeah,
as a
it's little
gamer,
bit of-
that's kind of the dream right there, to make that kind of money playing video games.
right, and admittedly, it is very hard to get into that
Oh,
industry.
absolutely, yes.
As a bit of as a bit of a an anecdote or extra onto what Tim was saying. The streamer Ninja is probably one of the most highest paid streamers out there.
Oh, God, yes.
I believe I did a study on this for one of my classes. He in 2018, I believe it was, he made over $17 million in endorsements and streaming deals
Man.
and just like subscriptions.
That is insane.
He was literally the highest paid streamer of that year by an exponential amount, like double what the next person was paid. So, yeah, if you want to tell me video games have no place in this world.
Exactly. But I know, kind of going back to what we were saying, the whole Sega versus Nintendo, Sega's whole marketing ploy, and I'm sure you remember this tagline, "We do what Nintendo don't." Was their whole thing. That was kind of their whole it's a my console's bigger than your console thing was Sega's whole marketing ploy. And I remember it that a lot of those commercials did nothing to tell you. They didn't really. I hate to use this analogy because we don't get political on here, but it's very much a political campaign ad. They never really told you why they're the best choice. They just told you why the other guy is the worst choice. And that was kind of what Sega did. Like, they would tout some of their features, but the majority of their marketing was Nintendo bad, Sega good. Ugh.
Yeah, and again, like Nintendo really positioned themselves as a family-friendly unit that was affordable, accessible. Everybody knew Mario back then too. Like Sonic was well known, but I think he was more niche well known.
Right.
Like, well, you really had to be into the old retro, the older consoles to be really kind of know who he was. I mean, I had a Sega Genesis.
Yeah, same. Obviously.
I had a Sega Genesis. I played it for a long time, but
Nintendo was your love.
I think when it wasn't the GameCube. There was maybe it was the 64. I don't know. When one of those systems came out, I traded in my Genesis.
Yeah.
Like I was like, eh.
Well, I remember I was actually talking about Mario. There was a while back I was reading an article and it was about like pop culture and how some characters are so iconic, and they actually polled. It was like 1,000 people, and just showed them pop culture icons based on things that they knew nothing about. So for video games, one of the characters they picked was Mario, and for people that didn't know anything about Mario, like, can you identify this person? And they
do a ball.
It is up to 37, by the way, but they showed people Mario, and 99% of the time, even people with no knowledge of games were able to identify Mario. So Mario is, as far as video games go, the most easily recognizable video game icon.
Yep.
So I mean that says a lot about Nintendo's marketing. Even people that don't play games know who Mario is.
Well, I mean, if you look at where Mario is now, like in today's world,
golfing, playing tennis, being a doctor,
video games, TV shows, movies, Lego sets. Your son has. When I say movies, I'm talking about like animated movies.
I'd say
animated like directed.
We're not going to talk about that movie, are we?
No, we're not.
Good.
No, I don't have enough liquor in me to talk about that movie. Lego sets, toys, paraphernalia.
Yeah, plushies, bedding, clothing, personal inner thigh massager. I mean, you can find Mario anywhere.
Right. Exactly. It's me. I'm a baddie power. Anyway, so
Mario Brothers the movie, Mario Brothers the sheets.
Right, exactly. And for those of you that don't know, actually, once Mario found a voice, an actual voice, it has been the same gentleman who has voiced Mario, Luigi, Waluigi, and Wario.
Yep.
Since have all been voiced. He actually does all four of those characters. Very nice gentleman. I think you met him in a con, didn't you?
It was actually at a work conference that I went to. Charles
Oh,
Martinet,
that's
a
right. Yes, right.
very, very, very delightful gentleman.
Yeah. So, this show is educational, folks. Let your kids watch it.
We do not
So,
endorse children watching this show.
yes. Please notice the ratings tags on the episodes.
Yeah.
They're
all set to mature by default.
correct. I mean, retro. Yeah. So, I mean, we've really only talked about like the Nintendo and the Game Boy, but like there was so much out from back then that like we haven't even touched on. Like we talked about the Genesis, and the Genesis was cool. Like it was awesome. It was like a 16-bit system that competed really well with the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
the Super Nintendo was a 16-bit system, which for those of you who don't know, the 16-bit system was twice the horsepower as the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was only 8-bit.
Well, and the Sega Master System, which was lesser known. I mean, the Sega in the States didn't really hit their stride until the Genesis. I only know two people personally, that owned Master Systems, if that tells you anything. But I know countless that owned a Genesis.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you remember the little peripheral for the Genesis that was like right at the twilight hours of that system, the 32X?
Yes, I remember buying 4 of them, and not a single one of them worked. I was very disappointed in that. But I guess
so. For those of you who don't know what it was a peripheral that you stuck in the cartridge slot on top of the Genesis, and then you stuck your game on top of that, and it was supposed to double you from 16-bit to 32-bit. I think there was 5 or less games. There was like a Sonic. There was like a Sonic 32-bit game that was supposed to use it, but it was a very unreliable thing.
Yeah. So, like, it was a neat idea, but it was pretty much a... They were trying to get the last little bit of Genesis sales out before they went on to their next system. And they did that by, effectively... I don't want to say lying, but by effectively promising next-gen quality on your current-gen console, which, I mean, even to today, that doesn't always work. I mean, with like cloud gaming now, yeah, I guess you could get it to work, but like back in those days, that was really unheard of. Right. But yeah, the 32X, that was a thing. But I remember something very similar to that, the Sonic and Knuckles game, where there was.
Oh yeah, I know which one you're talking. Yep. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
There was originally Sonic 1, 2, and 3, but then there was also a 4th game called Sonic and Knuckles, which had a cool feature on it. The top of the cartridge actually flipped up. And, like, it was its own standalone game, but if you popped in Sonic 3 into it, as an example, you could actually play as Knuckles in Sonic 3. Because, like, Knuckles was a character in Sonic 3, but you couldn't play as him. This would allow you to play, like, Knuckles' story. And then Sonic and Knuckles was its own... You could play it as a standalone game. But if you've ever... Any of you that have seen the meme of Sonic and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles, stems from the fact that you could technically take a Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, put it into your Genesis, stack another Sonic and Knuckles cartridge into that, another one into that, another one into that, and literally make a tower of Sonic and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles. It didn't do anything. You were still playing Sonic and Knuckles, because it was literally passing the first cartridge through the second cartridge, through the third cartridge, through the fourth, etc.
Little known fact, actually, you could pop a Sonic 2 cartridge into it play Knuckles. You could play Knuckles in Sonic 2.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody.
I don't think it did anything for Sonic 1, though. I don't think.
No, that Sonic 1 was too old at that point to be able to do it. Because I think basically what they did was the cartridges were big enough and it contained enough memory at that point that they could basically store the entirety of Sonic 2 into the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge.
Right.
And then just render the character. So the Genesis was a really kind of a niche platform. Like, not everybody had one. It wasn't. It never really caught on, and it was competing against the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Again, the family-friendly system, the Mario system,
the
system that birthed Super Mario RPG, one of the greatest games of all time. Fight me.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's no Chrono Trigger, but that's a whole other debate.
Yeah, no Chrono Trigger, no Secret of Mana, but I mean, it was
So many good RPGs in that system.
yeah. I mean, look at it. I mean, the Super Nintendo had the majority of the major SquareSoft, and that
Yeah.
was before they were Square Enix. It was
Yep.
SquareSoft.
Yep.
SquareSoft RPGs all the way up through Final Fantasy VI.
Yep. I mean, now Sega had, admittedly, I mean, this will come as no surprise to you or anybody else listening. The Master System and the Genesis had, admittedly, one of my favorite RPG series, Phantasy Star, which play completely different than Phantasy Star Online. Let me tell you. I recently went
back. They also had the original Knights. I mean, if you remember.
Well, that was on the Saturn, which is the next generation.
That's true.
Yep.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
I recently, because I have the Sega Genesis collection for my Switch, I was going through it, seeing what games they had. I'm like, oh, I remember that. I never got to play the original Phantasy Star games, and I'm like, oh, they're on there. Yeah, those are some old school RPGs. Let me tell you.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of brings up a good point. The whole point of like retro gaming is like we now have, the Nintendo Classic Mini and the SNES SNES Mini,
the Genesis Mini.
The Genesis Mini, and there's a bunch of like off-brand platforms that basically it's just like a Raspberry Pi in a case that has an emulator that runs like 100 games on it. And in reality, you could do that you could do that on your own. You could get a Raspberry Pi and run an emulator on it and have 100 Nintendo games.
Exactly.
But I mean the memory card in like your like a camera memory card has more memory than any of the Nintendo games combined from back in the day. But we have these classic systems, these re-releases, these retro platforms. I have a Super Nintendo Classic. It's 6 inches by 4 inches and has an HDMI plug on it.
Yeah. I've got the NES Mini, the SNES Mini, and the Genesis Mini. I managed to get all three.
Nice. Yep. Well, let's not forget there was also the PlayStation Mini.
I have that too.
Giant flaming turd, because it had no games that anybody actually wanted on it.
Like the only one, like Final Fantasy VII, okay, but a lot of people already have that on literally everything because that's what it's available for now.
Switch, pretty sure it was on GameCube, PlayStation, anything really.
Yeah.
PSN, it's on the PlayStation Store.
Steam, my phone.
Steam, I'm pretty sure it's on Xbox Game Pass.
I think so, yeah.
Like, you can't walk through a gaming platform without tripping over the OG Final Fantasy VII.
Yep. But, I mean, the one that it did have on there, it had some of the original Persona games, which I was never able to get a hold of, like a physical copy here. So it was nice getting to actually play those. I've played all the recent ones, but I think Persona 3 was the first one that I played on the PS2. I hadn't played any of the prior ones, so I mean, it did give me the option, or the ability to play those. Would I buy, if it came out again today, knowing what's on it again, would I buy it a second time? Probably not. But it is a fun little thing to have in my collection. I mean, it's sitting up in my bedroom. I honestly don't think it's even plugged in. Mostly because I think I needed the HDMI cord for something else. But anyway, yeah. But
and I think the major kick in the arse for that one was like it cost like $80 when it came out. Everyone was like, "Hey, that's really cool. What's your catalog?" Oh,
yeah. Now I will say that
this is $80.
Yeah, I will say though that the aftermarket modding community though has done a lot with the PlayStation Mini. I mean, there are people that literally have the entirety of the PlayStation collection on their Mini because of the way it's modded, which is insane to me, but
but again, at the same time, I don't know that that's really something that I'm willing to provide accolades on, because
exactly.
I mean, these devices it's literally just a Raspberry Pi with
or the equivalent thereof,
or an equivalent of a Raspberry Pi with an emulator on it. So like anybody that is tech savvy could get a Raspberry Pi and put an emulator on it and run all of these games. I mean, you can get You can get a PlayStation emulator for your computer pretty easily online.
Yep.
I mean, I had a Game Boy emulator. I was playing Pokemon Red and
Oh God.
Pokemon Red for a few months on my PC. Um, uh, Please don't sue me, Nintendo.
Yeah.
I owned the original. I owned the original Red and Blue. I still have them around here somewhere.
There you go.
I paid for them. So yeah, I mean, retro gaming, and like if you look at Wikipedia, I mean, like look at retro gaming on Wikipedia. I have the list up in front of me. Like there are so many retro style consoles out there. I mean,
Yeah.
Atari flashbacks,
Yep.
the Nintendo ones, let's see, Super Retrocade.
God.
Here's one for you: the C64 Mini, which is a Commodore
Yes.
64 Mini.
I almost picked one of those up just out of the novel sense of having one and morbid curiosity. But then I'm like, literally, realistically, what am I going to do with this after I turn it on once? Nothing.
Yeah.
That was a very niche market for that one, I think.
Right. There's also the Neo Geo arcade. You remember that one?
Yep. Now that one, like in certain areas of the world, that sold actually pretty well. Where Neo Geo had like a much higher market presence than what they did here in the States.
True. And you go into like even like the dollar store and you can get like a retro style console that's got handheld that's got a few games on it for like $10.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm not wanting to say, I'm not trying to detract and say that these retro games aren't worth it. They absolutely are.
Oh yeah.
I mean we're kind of in that hipster age of retro.
Yeah.
Where everything and it kind of makes me sad at how old I am.
Yeah.
Everything that I grew up on is now retro and hip and cool, and I'm going, I owned that when it first came out.
Exactly.
Get off my lawn. But yeah, so like the retro games of the past, and we still haven't even really touched on the original PlayStation.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that was like when jumping forward from like the Super Nintendo Genesis era to the next one up. I mean, we had the Nintendo 64, we had Sony's first entry in the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation at the time, and we had the sadly ill-fated Sega Saturn, which I never did. I own a Saturn.
I think it really all comes down to just like Sega's piss poor marketing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because it could have been a competitor to Sony's.
Oh, absolutely.
To the PlayStation or the PlayStation, and even its next generation, the Dreamcast. Like, they could have been competitors. They didn't have games. Like, they had games, but it was always like usually first party games or somebody that they. Some dude they paid to develop them from their minivan,
right,
or something like that. It just didn't have well-known properties, and it just wasn't marketed very well.
Well, you mentioned the Dreamcast. One of the things that really killed the Dreamcast when it came out, it was also a CD-based system. They used a proprietary format for how data was stored on these discs, and the whole purpose of it was to deter piracy. The problem was, the format that they used actually made it easier to pirate those games. And by the time they started figuring out how to get to circumvent that piracy, there were more pirated copies of Dreamcast games out in the wild than there were new games being put onto this new format. So, I mean, Sega sadly just had to cut their losses on it. Literally, I won't get into the specifics of it. If you have a computer with a CD burner, you are already qualified to make Dreamcast games. That's all I'll say on it. I'm not going to get into piracy, but just to express how easy it was. Yeah. But I mean, like, the Dreamcast...
Computers have CD drives now?
Yeah, I know, right? I actually have an external CD drive just to make physical hard copy backups of stuff. So, because flash drives, I mean, there's probably 20 in my office here. Now, ask me if I can find them. Like, there's
pretty much use cloud storage for everything anymore.
Maybe I don't know if it's just because I'm a couple years older than you. Like, I don't entirely trust cloud storage.
You're not even a full year older than me.
You shush. But like,
You're 360 days older than me.
I am. Um, like, okay, I have my flash drive here, which I don't know if Ian, if you can see that. This is the
Yeah, I can see it.
flash drive from the collector's edition of StarCraft 2. It is a I almost dropped it. It is James Rayner's ID tag, and like the front of it actually lights up when you plug it in. It's neat, but that one I keep on my desk just because I have all my like cool little knickknacks. But anyway, the Dreamcast,
David Dogbone.
exactly. The Dreamcast. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. The Dreamcast is, for me, it always holds a special place for me just because it was so unique. I don't think I think I'm the only one of our friends group that actually owned a Dreamcast, so it was for me, it was kind of a point of pride that I've got this thing that nobody else that I know like. I can't even remember anybody even at school that I wasn't friends with that I knew had one. Um, I remember the. Good.
I was always like a single system kind of household. Like we just
Right.
I didn't have more than one game system available and like plugged in at a time. So it was, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64,
Right.
PlayStation 2, I think.
Yeah.
Like I never owned a PS1.
Right.
I had a PS2 because that was like the big hot system of the day.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean when the
still over there behind me.
when the PS2 came out, like it shut everybody else down. I mean, Sony,
Yeah.
like the PS1 was good. It was unique because it was one of the first consoles to go and use discs instead of cartridges, which data storage wise held just an insane amount more data than a cartridge could. Nintendo for that same generation on the Nintendo 64 went with cartridges. And famously, this era is when Nintendo and Squaresoft had their big falling out. Because Final Fantasy VII was originally going to be an N64 game. But the scope of game that they wanted to make would not physically fit on Nintendo's cartridges. And they begged and pleaded with Nintendo, like, look, all the other competitors, they're going to discs. That's the way things are going to be going. And Nintendo just shut it down every step of the way. So Square said, cool, we'll see you later, and that's how we got Final Fantasy on the PlayStation 1. And for years, Final Fantasies were PlayStation exclusives. And even to this day, even though, with the exception of the 7 remake, the Final Fantasy games are, multi-platform games, but they typically still show a little bit more love to Sony. Like maybe the frame rate might be better, or there'll be extra features in it, or exclusive content, or timed content. Or in the case of 7 Remake, it's a timed system exclusive for the PlayStation 4/5 family.
Right. So
they still haven't announced a release date for any other consoles, even for the original 7 Remake, thinking about it.
Yeah. So, as a little bit of context for you folks, the Nintendo 64 was released in 1996 and has sold 32.9 million systems worldwide.
Which is still a respectable number in this day and age.
It is a very respectable number in this day and age. The PlayStation 2 was released in 2000, which was 4 years later, and has since sold over 155 million units.
Yeah.
Take that into perspective. They have sold more than 5 times as many units 4 years later as the Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
Now, granted, let's see, where was the GameCube? The GameCube came out in 2001, so a year after the PlayStation 2, and still only sold 21 million units, which is 10 million units less than the Nintendo 64.
Yeah. See, I figured that the GameCube would have sold more than the N64 did.
I think the problem was just they took baby steps into things. Like they went discs, but they went mini discs.
Yeah.
And you couldn't really do anything with the mini discs. Yeah. And maybe it was a protection thing where they were trying to be like, with mini discs, people can't pirate our shit. I don't know.
No, you still could.
Yeah, you still could.
Yeah.
For those of you out there who have a CD-ROM drive, take a look. There's a little tiny inset into the CD-ROM drive that's actually for mini discs.
Yeah.
I actually had some computer hardware that had mini discs for the install drivers.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
I think I might actually even have the mini discs still in my bucket. I was going to say,
it was usually for like hardware for your computer. It would have the drivers on it because they didn't need to waste money on a full size disc for like a 50 meg file, they could just put it on a mini disc, which it's smaller, so it's cheaper.
Right, exactly.
But the GameCube or the GameCube the GameCube came out, used the mini discs. The like I had alluded to, the Dreamcast kind of faded away into obscurity, sadly. Like I said,
here's actually an interesting nugget for you. The Sega Saturn released in 1994, and it sold in its lifetime 9.26 million units.
Okay.
The Dreamcast came out 4 years later in 1998 and sold 9.13 million units, actually less than the Sega Saturn.
Ouch.
So that probably tells you folks, where the major issues were there. It's just they didn't.
There were a lot of issues.
I mean, they just couldn't sell the system.
Yeah, sadly.
Sadly, yes, they just couldn't sell the platform. Now, current generation platforms, we see the PlayStation 5 having sold 10 million units, and the Xbox Series line, which is the new line, having sold 6.5 million units. So PlayStation is still ahead, but I think Microsoft is making a lot of very smart plays in the industry right now, which is they are behind on console sales, but I think they are ahead in game availability.
Yeah, well, especially with admittedly, I'm more of a Sony guy, but Game Pass is a phenomenal value. I mean, the fact that just recently, the new Halo game, Halo Infinite, had its first multiplayer. They didn't call it a beta test, but effectively that's what it was. It was a beta test, but Halo's a series that I've always played. I'm not very good at shooter games, but I have played every single Halo
Sniper
game.
Tank!
Oh my god, Sniper Tank, I love that. But I've played every single Halo game, usually with Ian. But Halo Infinite, I don't have to worry about buying that because I have Game Pass. They're just going to hand it to me.
And with the acquisition of Bethesda Softworks, pretty much everything Bethesda ever has done and will do is available on Game Pass.
Yep. Which is nice. It's nice, if I'm ever, feeling bored, it's I just want to play a new game, I can just literally boot up my Xbox, scroll through the list of available games, download 5 of them, play one of them, and I don't have to pay a penny for them. So even if it's a game that I end up not liking, I mean, yes, I'm paying for the Game Pass subscription, I get that. But I'm not paying, retail price for a game that I might not like. If it's one that I never play, I'm literally out no money because there's thousands of other games that I could play as well. So I mean, I have more than gotten my money's worth out of Game Pass. Just the first month alone I had it, I added up based on, because I was at GameStop at the time, I went in and even looked at our used prices at the time and added up every game that I had downloaded that I had played at least an hour of, and I had more than paid for Game Pass for, I think I figured it out to be 5 years of Game Pass from just the games that I'd only played an hour or more of. I mean, some of those games I played to completion. So, I mean, I have definitely gotten my value out of it. I mean, now I know Sony has PlayStation Now, which is their kind of answer to Game Pass, but it's all streaming, which is great and all, but I haven't looked at it in a while. Maybe their selection has gotten better. But I know a lot of the games I play on my PlayStation are first-party games anyway, which I'm more apt to go out and buy anyway. So it's
Yeah, when with the purchase of my new George Foreman, I got it as a bundle deal, and I got a year of PlayStation Access or PlayStation Now or whatever PlayStation Network, whatever the
PlayStation Plus. Yep.
Yeah, PlayStation Plus service included with it, and I was getting it set up earlier today, and I went and I was like, oh, cool, PlayStation Now, I can see, I can grab a couple of, see what kind of games they have. So I loaded it up and scrolling through, scroll. This doesn't scroll anymore. This is it.
Yeah.
There's 30, not even 30 games. There's 24 games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I will say that, the PlayStation Plus subscription, I mean, that's what allows you to play, multiplayer games online. It's a big thing. But you also get a selection of games every month. I will say that, they do have a pretty good selection of games they give you on there. Usually, like, I think it's like 3 or 4 games you get every month. I'll maybe download one of those, but that one was worth my time. Um, but like, bang for your buck, Game Pass is a better value. And as a Sony guy, I'll admit it, Game Pass is a better value.
Yeah. Anyway, getting back to retro games.
Yep.
Since we have non sequitured yet again.
Yet again.
So, yeah. I mean, the age of retro systems, and again, I mean, I'm one of the people that owned a PlayStation 2. You had 2 of them because one of them caught on fire.
Yes.
Literally shooting smoke out of the front of it, almost killing Tim. So,
I still love that story.
It's a fantastic story. Now I don't remember. Did you buy? You have the regular format PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm.
Was the second one you bought, was that the PlayStation 2 Mini, or was that a full-size one, and then you also owned a PlayStation Mini?
I never actually owned one of the PS2 Minis.
I thought you did.
No, I owned a PlayStation 1 Mini, but not a PS2 Mini.
Somebody I knew had a Mini. A PS2 Mini. I just don't remember who it was, I guess.
Right. But, yeah, that one literally blowing smoke at me. That was fun.
Yeah. Well, that tells you how much mileage that device got out of Tim. Was that it ran itself literally into the ground. Yeah, so retro gaming, I don't think there's a really good place that we can draw the line in the sand, like what we consider retro anymore. I think Xbox made a fantastic move in basically going, yeah, we run on a Windows ROM, and pretty much everything that ever existed before can run on our platform.
Yeah, more or less.
Because literally all the backwards compatibility is it runs an emulator.
Yeah.
That's real. All that it is an emulator.
While saying backwards compatibility, the PS2 was the first generational console to do, as far as not considering handhelds, was the first console to do the backwards compatibility. Because it was the first second generation disc console. Yeah.
You can't really say the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast were generally. I mean, they were completely different systems.
Yeah.
There is no comparing apples to apples there. It's apples to potatoes.
You had talked about Microsoft and running their OS. The OS for the Dreamcast is actually designed by Microsoft. If you have a Dreamcast, look at the front of it, and it will say something about Windows CE on the front of your console. It was running a modified version of Windows, and that's kind of how Microsoft got their foot in the door for gaming. So, in a very tragic way, if it wasn't for Dreamcast, we wouldn't have gotten the original Xbox. Which is why you see a lot of games that came out on the Dreamcast came out on the original Xbox. Originally, Sega's whole pitch to Microsoft was they wanted every Dreamcast game natively to be able to take the disc and put it in an original Xbox and play it. And Microsoft kind of shut that down and did a few ports of stuff. But a lot of original Dreamcast games got re-released on the Xbox after Sega stopped producing consoles.
Yeah. Microsoft did a really cool thing with basically making everything that they've ever produced or available on their platforms backwards compatible, supported.
Yep.
Including even digitizing many of them so that they're available on Game Pass or those kind of things. Sony kind of tripped over themselves a little bit with the PS3.
Yeah.
I think a cat just flew, literally flew across my background.
Probably.
Sorry, I saw it in my video feed and went, "What the hell?"
It's a demon. It's fine.
Yeah, Sony really kind of shot themselves in the foot with their backwards compatibility stuff between PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3.
Well, because the launch model PS3s were backwards compatible, and those are the ones that everybody, they were selling pretty decent. I mean, they were admittedly a lot higher priced than the 360, but people that were Sony fans wanted to get them. And then when they announced, hey, we're dropping the price, Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, but it's because we're taking backwards compatibility out of the system. Because whereas most consoles do that via emulation, the original PS3s literally contained some of the actual components for a PS2 because of the way that the PS2s ran. At the time, it was incredibly difficult to emulate and have it run well. So that's why the launch PS3s were so expensive, because you were effectively getting a system and a half on it. Then when they announced that they were dropping the backwards compatibility, you saw those things flying off of store shelves because people are like, well, crap, if I want one, I better get one now because I have this mountain of PS2 games. I want to still be able to play them on one console without having to switch back and forth. And like I said, I'm lucky enough to own one that still works. The backwards compatible PS3 is like the first gen backwards compatible that would do 1, 2, and 3. Later ones would do 1 and 3, but not 2. And the PS1 games they did via emulation. But the ones that do 1, 2, and 3, those are, I'm lucky that mine has lasted this long because those are prone to just breaking down. I mean, at this point, we're up to the PS5 now. Sony had stopped servicing PS3s a long time ago. But I remember there was one
Which
of my...
is funny because they just recently stopped servicing VCRs.
Yeah, I know, right?
For more As mentioned in one of our previous episodes.
Exactly, for more info on that. But I remember one of my friends had a backwards compatible PS3, and he had to send it in for servicing. They sent him. They said, hey, your system had a full system failure. We're just gonna have to replace it. He didn't think anything of it. They sent him a unit that was not backwards compatible, and like he fought and fought and fought for months. And they're like, we don't produce these. We don't have a warehouse of them we can send you. So they ended up compensating him with like PlayStation swag and a bunch of free games and whatnot. But he still said that's cool that they did this. But like eventually he gave up is what it was. He's like, it sucks that I now will no longer have that unless at this point, or at that point, those things were selling for more than one was brand new. I mean, by a considerable bit. So he's like, so unless I want to pay aftermarket prices to get another one, I'm out of backwards compatible PS3. Like, he tried to buy mine off me multiple times. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not getting rid of that. That's kind of a collector's item at this point. But, yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, so retro gaming, I think, is definitely out there. One of the things that we haven't touched on, but I'll at least mention, because I think we should probably about wrap up at this point. One of the things that I'll mention, though, is arcades.
Yeah.
Arcades were a thing of the past. They really kind of disappeared. But now we're seeing this boom of beercades.
Yeah.
Like, basically bars that they just buy up these old retro gaming machines, fix them, and like arcade machines, and like people go in there and drink themselves stupid while playing Ninja Turtles or the Simpsons arcade game, which was amazing, by the way. Or like the Marvel Avengers games.
Oh, that one was a lot of fun.
It's especially fun when like there's 4 people and the Captain America player the stick doesn't work right.
Yeah.
So he just keeps like trying to walk in the wrong direction.
Yep.
So retro gaming is going to continue, I think, to be a thing that sticks around. We'll continue to probably see games from back when Tim and I were growing up be considered retro, but I don't know. I think with the advent of digitalization and digital content delivery, I don't know that some of the newer stuff is really going to be considered retro yet.
Not yet.
Maybe when we get into that next actual generation, like the next level of gaming, like we've talked about this before, like full VR, full dive type technology, then the stuff that we're playing now might be considered retro.
Right. See, as far as like what's out now, I think like the PS3, Xbox 360 era, for me personally, that's kind of the cutoff. Because, like, Xbox One and PS4, they're still new things coming out for it. So I wouldn't consider those retro by any stretch of the imagination. But PS3, 360, that's kind of that's a dead genre. That's a dead generation at this point. And even that's kind of a stretch. Like, I don't want to call PS3 and 360 era retro because that was yesterday. But definitely,
they're still graphically, they still hold up relatively well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you look at like some of the remakes and the remasters that are coming out, that were released on those platforms. Mass Effect Legendary Edition just came out. It's
Yep.
been remastered.
Mhm.
That was a 360 era. I mean, I owned it on the 360 because I
Right.
haven't owned a PlayStation. I didn't previously own a PlayStation since the PlayStation 2.
Yep.
So I mean, it was a 360 era game that was released. Nintendo recently released a remake or a re-release of Republic Commando.
Yeah, which kind of
Star
came
Wars
out of
Republic
nowhere.
Commando, which was an original Xbox game. I owned it on the original
Same.
Xbox.
Same.
So that was, I mean, when did the OG 2001 is
Oh
when
my
the OG
gosh.
Xbox came out. So that game probably came out 2002, maybe 2003. So we're talking about 20
Yeah,
an 18 to 20-year-old game.
Our retro now.
So right. I mean, I don't even know that I would consider that game retro.
Right.
Like it's
See, like to you and I,
it holds up really well.
Like to you and I, retro is original Nintendo or Super Nintendo era. But like to our kids, like you put them in front of even a PS3 and like, oh wow, this looks so old. Oh God.
I mean, yeah, I don't think my kids have ever. My kids have actually. They played my Super Nintendo Mini.
Yeah.
They played the original Mario Kart. And they had a lot of fun with it. I'd also forgotten that in the original Mario Kart, all of the NPCs just stay literally in the middle of the track. So it's very easy to just like drop banana peels like literally in the middle of the track and win the game that way. But anyway,
I never noticed that.
yeah, no, the AI was not
Good.
actually intelligent.
Right.
Very artificial, just not intelligent at all. They were just
Yeah.
programmed to stay literally in the middle of the track the entire race.
Oh wow. I have to go back and play that again.
Yeah, you should check it out. But my point is, though, is like our kids, yeah, they probably consider the stuff that even from 10 years ago as retro, even
Right.
though they probably don't know the meaning of the word retro.
Right.
But
Damn kids.
get off my Nintendo!
Exactly.
Don't make me get my light gun.
Or the bazooka for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, that was something
That
we
was-
did. I had one of those.
Yep. Dude, I love that
the
thing.
Super Scope.
Super Scope. Yep.
Yes, and the Super Scope actually had like detachable peripherals too.
Yeah.
So like you could take the back off of it, and you could take the scope off it, and you could turn it into a handheld.
Yep.
Or you could actually use it as like a bazooka.
Yep. Put it on your shoulder and yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that thing was so fun.
Yes, it was. Anyway, so yeah, retro games, they hold a near and dear place in our hearts.
That they do.
It's well, I've said it multiple times during this episode. It's what we cut our teeth on as far as gaming goes.
Yep.
Tim had the Atari. What did you say? 2600?
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Like I said, I don't remember ever playing it, but I remember it being in the house.
Yeah. So the 2600 sold 30 million units back in 1977
Wow.
was when it released. That's actually more than the original Xbox, which only sold 24 million units.
Not bad, not bad. Atari. And now we've got that Atari, whatever the heck that thing is that nobody wants.
Yeah. Well, you may have forgotten about this one, but the Philips CDI. You remember that thing?
No, we're not talking about that thing. We are not talking about that thing. It doesn't exist.
It sold less
It is
than
an
a million
It is an
units.
urban legend. It does not exist. Everything you've seen about it on YouTube is just that's fan made content. That's
Yeah. Ah, man. Now I'm kind of wondering where was the Virtual Boy in all of this?
Oh God, I forgot about that migraine-inducing piece of.
It literally made your eyes bleed, folks.
Yeah,
I'm not even
like
kidding.
the red color wasn't because of the screen; it's because the blood over your eyes.
Yes, exactly. Like it was a cool idea, but the technology of the time did not support it at all.
Well,
not only would your eyes bleed, but you would get like scoliosis from having to bend over, hunch over and look into this thing.
Fun facts. I recently watched a YouTube video about the Virtual Boy. I'll say this, and we'll probably call it. I think we're running a little over time. But the Virtual Boy, like Nintendo wanted it to be a stopgap in between console generations. And all the initial ideas for it would have, in my opinion, made it a really good thing. They wanted full color. They wanted to keep the VR. They wanted it to be fully portable. But then Nintendo's like, well, hey, the higher ups are like, we really love the fact that you guys are so passionate about this. You're only getting like 10% of the budget, though. Like, they got significantly cut, so they had to make those concessions of having that monocolor screen with it being portable. And by that I mean you had to have a table with you at all times to play it.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like,
so,
retro gaming, I mean, if we're still doing this podcast here in 10 years, I'm sure we'll update this and talk about how we remember the day that Ian got his PS5, and we'll be delivering this via hologram.
Then we'll be on the, at that point, we'll be on the, like, the Sony PlayStation eyeball ROM.
Right.
Well, you just download the software directly into your eyes, which, again, if anybody wants to invent cybernetic eyes that actually work, sign me up.
I've seen Ghost in the Shell. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet.
Hey, Spike Spiegel had a cybernetic eye, and it worked out really well for him.
How did it work out for all the people he loved?
Well, about as well as it worked out for anybody else in that series.
Exactly. So, anyway.
Yeah, so one final nugget for you. The Virtual Boy released July 21st, 1995 in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It was discontinued in 1996.
Yeah.
A year later.
Yep.
Having only sold 770,000 units.
Ow! Ooh, I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, it was.
Ugh.
It was bad.
I mean, what's sad,
And,
like all the development money that went into that, but even by today's standards, a game, just a piece of software for the hardware that's already made, selling less than 1 million copies, is typically considered an unsuccessful venture. For an entire console to have sold less than 1 million, even in that era, is a phenomenal failure. Sorry, Nintendo, you dropped the ball on that one, but you had a lot of other good ideas to kind of balance that out. So,
right. And here's also something for you. It had a 20 megahertz CPU.
Oh my god! And they were trying to run.
I'm pretty sure my cat purrs at more than 20 megahertz.
And they were trying to run VR on that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Well, on that terrible disappointment, we are probably going to wrap up for the night.
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm.
As always, you can catch us on your favorite social media platforms, Twitter @NonSequiturNerds, Facebook. Please also find us on YouTube for the video versions of this podcast. And you can also find our actual podcasts hosted on Anchor.fm and locate us on your favorite platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, and 6 or 7 other random ones that I don't remember. With that, I think we will go ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgia-filled tour.
We have been doing a lot of those lately.
Yeah, maybe it's nostalgia. Maybe it's just a sign of us getting old. I don't really know.
Maybe. I remember when
What
this
was
was
that?
orange
Couldn't hear
glows
you.
as far as the eye can see. We used to ride the trolley.
Yes, exactly. It was only a nickel, and even then, that was more than we could afford. That was more food than we could pay for a week.
Oh God, we're not that old.
Not that old, although we did grow up in BFE nowhere. So, yeah.
We didn't even
And
have
for
a
those
trolley.
of you that don't know what BFE means, please, by all means, look it up, because I'm not going to tell you.
Or get a hold of us on our Facebook page.
Yes, we might tell you there. So anyway, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you, and as always, tune in next time for our next great adventure, because I'd tell you what it is, but we don't even know yet.
That's true.
Very true.
Drop us some
so
suggestions on our Facebook page. Let us know what kind of things you would like us to cover. Or if you're on YouTube, leave it down in the comments. Isn't that a thing YouTubers still say?
I think so. Is it down in the comments?
Down in the comments.
Click the bell. Click the bell. Like and subscribe.
I don't think we've ever actually pitched that before. So
I don't think so either.
Please do. I mean, we do have several subscribers on YouTube. Thank you all. I mean, for subscribing to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So yeah, please continue to do that. Reach out to us on Facebook. Let us know what kind of things you'd like us to cover. Maybe we'll cover that topic in a future episode for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes our jobs easier because we don't have to think about stuff that we need to cover.
It's true.
It's true. Anyway, so I think that'll do it for us today. For Non Sequitur Nerds, I'm Ian.
And I'm Tim. That's me. Good night, everybody.
Bye.